This is the new ZWO Seestar S50 Pro smart telescope. And I know from the comments on my previous videos that many of you have been eagerly waiting for the release of this scope because on paper, it seems like the perfect smart telescope. The reach of the original S50 with all the bells and whistles of the S30 Pro, including a larger, more sensitive sensor and improved optics. But on-paper specs are one thing, in-person testing reveals a lot more. So join me as I put this new S50 Pro through its paces and compare it to the original S50 and the other Seestar models in a comprehensive review. My name is Nico, and this is Nebula Photos. I've had the Seestar S50 Pro for the past 2 months, which has given me time to really get to know it for this review. ZWO provided me with this pre-release unit, but they have no say in what I share in this video. So let's jump in. The S50 Pro is the largest and heaviest Seestar release so far. It's a full pound heavier than the original S50 and a bit thicker as well. If you're thinking about airport travel, the S50 Pro case should work as your under-the-seat carry-on. But of course, with the S30 or S30 Pro, I can actually slip the whole thing in its padded case into my under-the-seat bag where I could also fit in my laptop and other stuff. So the S30 line is still more portable. In terms of storage, the S50 Pro matches the S30 Pro with 128 gigabytes of internal storage, while the non-Pro Seestars have only 64 gigabytes. Something you'll definitely notice with the S50 Pro if you've used the previous Seestars is that it is the quietest yet when slewing and tracking. It's whisper quiet. I did a little sound test so you can hear for yourself. I've not taken apart any of the Seestars, but I would guess, based on it being quieter, that the drive system for tracking the sky has been improved in this model. That would also line up with what I observed in terms of tracking ability. With every previous Seestar model, I was typically okay with 30-second exposures in EQ mode, but had issues when I raised that to 60-second exposures. Not that 60-second exposures wouldn't work entirely, but just that the app would reject a lot more frames due to poor tracking. So then I usually just ended up at 30 seconds to get more data through the night. The S50 Pro's reject rate with the 60-second exposures is now very low, at least with the sample that I've been testing. Here's some data I collected on that, comparing it to the original S50. Another first for the S50 Pro is a bigger battery. I believe this is the main reason the Pro is heavier and thicker than the original S50. All three previous Seestars have 6 amp hour batteries, while the S50 Pro has a 10 amp hour battery. In real-world testing, this means the original Seestars get you around 4 to 6 hours of runtime, while the new S50 Pro will go for 8 to 9 hours on one charge. So with the battery that lasts that long, I never had to plug in the S50 Pro during use when testing it because we have short summer nights right now, so it always lasted through the whole night. However, in the middle of the winter, when the nights are longer and the cold can also shorten battery lifespan, it would probably be a different story. The other thing to note is at home, it's of course easy to recharge in between sessions with the provided USB cable. But what about when you're out on a camping trip visiting a dark sky site? How are you supposed to recharge your Seestar then? Well, that's where Bluetti comes in. Bluetti is sponsoring this video, and they make a variety of portable power stations at different sizes and price points. The one that they sent out here is the Elite 100 V2, and I've been testing it, and it has a very high capacity. It could actually recharge this S50 Pro 20 times over. So plenty of power, even for the most epic of camping trips. In terms of power ports for the Seestar, you're going to use one of the USB power outputs. It has 2 USB-A and 2 USB-C, but the Elite 100 V2 also has 4 AC power outputs and 2 12-volt DC center pin barrel outputs like we often use with astronomy gear. So plenty of options and enough power that I can power plenty of things on my camping trip. For example, I like freshly ground coffee when camping. I know that's a little bougie, but there's nothing better than really good coffee while out camping in the middle of nowhere. So I think the combination of the Seestar and a Bluetti portable power station would be perfect for your next dark sky trip. And when you do get all set up on that trip, the first object I'm guessing many people will observe with their new S50 Pro is the moon if it's out. It's an easy thing to do with the Seestar. And if we compare the 1x view of the S50 Pro versus the original S50, it looks like the original is more magnified, it's more zoomed in, but that's not actually an accurate way to put it. The moon is taking up the same number of pixels here, it's just that the sensor size on the S50 Pro is 4 times larger than the original S50. We're going from an HD 1080p sensor on the S50 to a 4K sensor on the S50 Pro. So that just means there's more space around the moon, and the moon appears smaller on screen on the S50 Pro, but you're actually not losing any actual resolution. If we zoom both into 100%, you can see the same amount of detail. They're basically identical. And the same thing plays out for all the solar system objects, basically identical resolution. So here's a comparison on the sun, and now here is Saturn. So at least in solar system mode, there's not much of a difference between what the S50 and the S50 Pro can see. Milky Way mode, however, is only available on the Seestar Pro models. And it's basically identical between the S30 Pro and S50 Pro. In both cases, they use a 4K sensor behind a very wide-angle lens that allows for a 63-degree field of view. You can use it in any part of the sky. For example, here is the Cygnus constellation captured in Milky Way mode. But something pretty cool it can do if you're capturing the core of the Milky Way is freeze the foreground and blend it back in seamlessly. I've noticed this feature has been improving with each app release, and so it now lets you spend several minutes on the foreground, which is nice to reduce noise. I also tested the Milky Way Arch Panorama mode, which can do an 8K resolution by expanding the field of view, creating a pano image automatically. It did work here, but it looks a little bit funky because I was dealing with moving clouds, but it did all stitch correctly. I will have a more detailed look at Seestar's Milky Way mode in a video coming out soon, but the main point I want to make here is that the Milky Way features on the S50 Pro are completely identical to the S30 Pro, and they work quite well. Now let's turn to my favorite, deep sky. And this is what Seestar calls the stargazing mode. This is, I think, the main event of Seestar, and the S50 Pro is very impressive. Let's start by looking at field of view with all 4 Seestars on some popular targets. As you can see here, the S30 Pro has by far the biggest field of view. The S50 Pro is next biggest, and it's just a little bit bigger than the standard S30, and then the original S50 has the smallest field of view. I'm using a telescope simulator here, so this is survey imagery, not images I took with the Seestar. I just want to show how various objects fit with each Seestar. And the S30 Pro is still going to be your best bet for really big objects. Of course, you can use mosaic mode to expand the smaller FOVs of the Seestars. It just takes longer. I do think the S50 Pro, at just a little bit bigger than the S30, is a nice middle ground for field of view for many different deep sky objects. So let's take a look at those. Okay, I want to start with a little bit of a technical analysis. So we're going to be looking at basically unprocessed data just stacked. And I have the S50 here on the left and the S50 Pro on the right. And this was taken in Alt-Az mode, 500 subs each. So equal amounts of integration. And with this first comparison, I just wanted to show you again how the field of view changes between the S50 and the S50 Pro. Everything here in black on the S50 is what we're gaining with the larger sensor of the S50 Pro. Of course, you can always crop in on the S50 Pro image and get just as much detail, if not more, than you get with the S50. So that's the first thing. In terms of signal to noise ratio and just, that kind of thing, I think maybe we're just getting a little bit more signal with the improved sensor of the S50 Pro, but it's not a huge difference, of course. Okay, now I've cropped the S50 Pro image into the same size as the S50 because I just want to look at image sharpness. And we'll zoom well in here to really look at that. And I think that it's clear that the improved optics, they added an extra element and I guess improved the optics just generally with the S50 Pro, has improved image sharpness. And we can see that through the stars, right? There's a lot of smaller stars here that are showing in the S50 Pro image that are sort of blurred out in the S50 image. For instance, this one, this one, this one. We can just barely see one of those 3 in the S50 image, while all 3 are quite clear in the S50 Pro image. And that continues across the field. even with larger stars, hopefully you can see they're a little bit tighter on the S50 Pro image. But the main thing that you're going to see is just that very, very small stars suddenly appear because it's a sharper telescope. Now, it could be the optics, it could be the better tracking on the S50 Pro, or it could be probably a combination of both the better tracking and the better optics that's giving us this sharper result with the S50 Pro. But I saw this throughout my testing. This is, of course, in Alt-Az mode with 10-second exposures, but it was just as pronounced in EQ mode with 60-second exposures, how much sharper the S50 Pro was compared to the S50. So that's the sharpness comparison. Okay, now this is the color correction comparison. These are both highly saturated images to show you the color correction. Basically, what I'm seeing here is that the original S50, which is a triplet design, is going more to the green in how it's not perfectly color corrected, and the S50 Pro is going more towards the magenta side. Now, both of these, it's not a big issue. In processing, you can definitely deal with this, but this is what we call chromatic aberration. And the S50, it's on the green side. On the S50 Pro, it's on the magenta side. Okay, that's all I'm going to show in terms of comparisons between the S50 and the S50 Pro for deep sky objects. Now I'm just going to show you my processed results that I got with the S50 Pro and talk about these just a little bit. So this, I think, is my favorite image I've ever taken with a smart scope. It's just about 6 hours of various exposure lengths, some 10 seconds, some 30 seconds, some 60 seconds, all combined together and cropped in on the iris. And I don't know, I just think it really turned out to my liking really well. There's really nice detail in here on the center, on the reflection nebula and iris, but then as a whole, I just really like how I was able to bring out the colorful star field and this rich, chocolatey, dark dust all around the iris. So I just think it turned out really well, and the S50 Pro definitely impressed me with what it could do on a sort of difficult target like this, the Iris Nebula. Now, here's a less difficult target. This is often, one of the first of 3 targets that people go after, along with Orion and the Pleiades. This is, of course, the Andromeda Galaxy Messier 31, and I only spent 30 minutes on it, which I think for 30 minutes, this is very impressive. If I tried 30 minutes with just like a DSLR untracked, I could not reach this kind of result. It's definitely a very nice result for just 30 minutes. I was able to bring out some of the hot blue stars in the outer arms, lots of nice detail here in the core area and the dust lanes. And overall, I'd be pretty happy with this. I said there would be no more comparisons, but let me show you one more comparison here. This is not between the S50 and S50 Pro, but just between what the S50 Pro creates if you do no processing, if you just accept the default stack of 2 hours on the Cygnus Wall region in the North America Nebula versus 2 hours that I've processed with my processing technique of sort of accentuating the O3 signal and making more of a color separation. This was, of course, done with the light pollution filter, which is unchanged from previous Seestar models. It's a wide bandpass dual narrowband filter. I think it's like 20 and 30 nanometer band passes or something like that. So they call it a light pollution filter. You could also call it a dual narrowband filter. Okay, and then the last one to show you here, this is a challenging object. I wanted to go after one really challenging narrowband object with the S50 Pro to see what it could do on something quite dim. This is Sharpless 132, sometimes called the Lion Nebula in Cepheus. And it's a really interesting nebula. It has a lot of HA signal, a lot of O3 signal, but the O3 signal is very dim. So it does take some integration to bring it out. This is 13 hours on the Lion Nebula. And if we look here in the center, it did a good job on bringing out this O3 river. This is sort of an interesting little part of it right here. It also brought out a lot of background HA, like this, all this stuff down here is quite dim. And it shows how sensitive this sensor is, that it was able to do this much on such a faint emission nebula. One thing I haven't talked about yet is price. And the pre-order price for the S50 Pro is $899 US. After pre-order sales end, it will retail for $999. For context, the S30 Pro is $699 US and the normal S30 is $399. The original S50 has been discontinued for a while now, several months, but its last price before being discontinued was $549. Now, if we just look at the Seestars that will be available going forward, the S30 is obviously the value model competing with the Dwarf Mini on the low end with fewer frills, no secondary camera. The S30 Pro and S50 Pro are both more feature-packed with the secondary camera, which can do Milky Way mode, star trails, and other things. But the Pro models also have the bigger, more sensitive sensor, and that's going to make a big difference for stargazing mode, especially on the dimmer deep sky objects that I like Nebula. Between the two Pro models, the main benefit of the S30 Pro is going to be portability. It's definitely easier to take everywhere at about half the size and half the weight. And for me, the main benefit of the S50 Pro is the better tracking. But for others, it might be the increased resolution for going after smaller objects like small galaxies. Many things in the Messier catalog are actually pretty small. In any case, with each smart telescope release, I do see them catching up and getting closer and closer to the results that I can get with an entry-level traditional astrophotography rig. So I'm curious to see what we will get next out of the Seestar line, but I can confidently say the S50 Pro is the best Seestar that ZWO has made to date. So that's it for this one. Till next time, this has been Nico Carver, wishing everyone clear skies.